Joining us live via Skype this morning is Sam Walker, news director for obxtoday.com. And thanks for joining us this morning. And Sam, talk about this big fundraiser you have tonight to benefit the families of Hatteras and Ocracoke Islands.
Yeah, the Outer Banks Brewing Station in Kill Hills is hosting a bartenders night. They got local bands coming in. They've got 4 former bartenders that are coming in: Scott Smith, Terry Kelly, Chris Queensberry, and Jay Ammons. And they're going to give all the tips they collect back to the relief efforts for Lower Hatteras and for Ocracoke. And of course, they're going to get some bragging rights if they get the most tips. Got a couple of pretty cool bands coming in. It all starts at 3 o'clock today Eastern time in Kill Hills, runs till 7 this evening. Should be a great event, and it's just one of the many ways that the residents on the northern end of the beaches, which are wide open, everything basically from Buxton north, and everything's wide open in Dare County, and visitors are back. But this is a way that we always give back. It's such a tight-knit community here, and when one part of the Outer Banks suffers, the other part comes together that doesn't get impacted and raises money. And this is just one of the many efforts that are going on here in this week after Dorian.
Yeah, we love hearing that. And your organization reported while Dorian was hitting the Outer Banks. So tell us about some of the things you saw as the hurricane was bearing down.
Well, we really saw that the storm surge forecasts were spot on. For Ocracoke, 7.1 feet, highest ever recorded. And many people even say that one man who has a home built in the 1780s that never got water in it, it got water in it from the sound. And that was a big thing, that sound side storm surge. Hatteras Village, Frisco, parts of Buxton, 2 to 4 feet of flooding. The Cape Hatteras Secondary School, which is the high school and middle school here on Cape Hatteras, finally going to reopen tomorrow after being closed for more than a week. Their older buildings took some damage. Their athletic fields were destroyed. These are just one of the stories. You go to Ocracoke, 400 residences and businesses have been shut down because they can't get power because they're in a condition they're not able to. They pulled the meters. Just some of those things. And then we dealt with not only that, we've dealt with the economic impact that's going on because of this being the shoulder season, as it's called. But September and October really are key to our how folks profit and are able to survive through the winter. This is a huge impact. Ocracoke's not going to reopen for this fall season. Lower Hatteras Island's open and people are coming, but there's still businesses that have been impacted. Those are the big stories that are coming out of this. Is going to be the long-term impacts that we see out of Dorian.
And Sam, let's talk about impacts, because last year you had impacts from Hurricane Florence. Now this year, impacts with Dorian. Are you still kind of rebuilding from impacts from Florence from even last year? Then here comes Dorian.
Yeah, and one thing that happened with Florence was that was an inland soundside storm surge, such as Newbern and Bellhaven, those places. And those places are still recovering. They fortunately missed much of the big stuff out of Dorian. This time, Dorian really did its impacts to Ocracoke and Hatteras. Michael probably had more impacts than Florence did to our coverage area from Ocracoke up to Nags Head and Corolla because of the flooding that happened with that on the storm surge side. But one thing about North Carolina, we bounce back from these things because we're stuck out here like we do. The Outer Banks, life on a sandbar. I always say that whenever we're on with you guys. That's part of what we deal with out here, and we're kind of unfortunately getting used to it. But sometimes these impacts do have a long range. And yes, people are still trying to recover from Florence in some areas. Here it's from Michael.
Sam Walker, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we wish you all the best across the Outer Banks.